Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Dr. Sumanth Swaminathan, co-founder and director of Vironix, and welcome back to our expert video series. Today we have Shreyas Iyer and Vinay Konda, both students and interns of Vironix. Shreyas is a 17-year-old high school senior at Charlotte Latin School with ambitions to study economics in college. He's also had classical Indian saxophone training under myself, Dr. Swaminathan, and has been working with me for 6 months through an NSF Small Business Innovation Research Award. Welcome, Shreyas.
Hello.
Vinay Konda is currently a sophomore at University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, studying computer engineering. He's also been a student of mine in Carnatic saxophone for nearly 8 years. And Vinay has had prior internship experience in database design. He's currently participating in data science internship with advisement for myself also. Welcome, Vinay.
Hello.
And to the folks watching, in case it isn't obvious, obviously Shreyas and Vinay are longtime students of mine, both in the arts and sciences. One of the reasons we wanted to speak to them is because they've had a pretty interesting educational experience and trajectory in their early career. And the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, has really brought about eager contributions for a variety of people of all ages and backgrounds. And Vironix, of course, maintains a very strong and deep-held interest in mentoring some of these bright young talents as they proceed through their education. Shreyas, I want to start with you, and maybe you can just tell me a little bit about your current interests and where you are in your education right now.
Yeah, so I am a first semester, about to be second semester, fingers crossed, senior. I'm wrapping up the whole college applications journey, which has been extremely weird, I'd probably say, in a COVID time, because I'm sure Vinay and you can attest to the fact that you were able to visit colleges, for example, and you were able to get admissions representatives to come to your school or local communities to talk about this this big process, frankly. For me, it's kind of been largely self-guided and online, and much like a lot of other things with my academics, as well as, my internship here and other extracurricular activities, a lot of it has been largely online. And I think it's been quite difficult, I'd say, my academic journey, the first semester of senior year, but it's also been quite interesting. And, everyone's learning. I don't think that I'm necessarily having a harder time than, any other student in America at this time. And so I think we're making well of the situation that we have at hand. And personally, I can say that at Charlotte Latin, we're doing a great job of, online classes, Google Meets, that sort of stuff. So I think we're in a good place. It's definitely challenging, but, for a senior like myself, I could be happier, especially given the stuff that's going on.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like you're navigating a difficult scene, in a creative but pretty mature way. And I'm sure the scene at the university level has been a little bit different, Vinay, but I'm sure you've had similar challenges. So maybe you can tell me a little bit more about how things have gone at Urbana.
Urbana's been dealing with the situation step by step. Personally, I didn't go on campus, so I'm not really aware of how they implemented trying to keep all the students safe, and people that potentially got COVID, how they dealt with those students as well. But in my case, a lot of the learning that we did was online, and a lot of the sort of material that they would have usually taught in lecture and in person. For instance, we have labs that usually are pretty hands-on experiences, but during COVID, it's a lot more difficult to have that kind of experience from a lot of the classes that I'm taking. Another important part about the college experience is collaboration, and collaboration is just, although we do have the online tools of communicating with each other, kind of going to meet your peer across the hall, or collaborating with those people in person is a lot more helpful, and a lot more it can help you learn a lot of the harder material in college. And that with that sort of lacking this semester, it's been a little bit difficult, but I'm sure all the students have had to deal with that issue. And thankfully, I'm in a sort of tech, based major where I don't have to, deal with chemistry labs and, a lot of that experience. I'm sure for those is more integral, but for me, a lot of the online material would have been, administered through online channels anyways. So, it was definitely a change, but accommodating to it was, the same for all the students in my major. So,
And I think that the challenges of remote learning, I have no idea what that would have been, what that's like. I went to college myself. I actually don't want to say the number of years back, but what you guys have gone through and the challenges that you've overcome are quite impressive. And of course, you started your internship with us under the same circumstances, right? Trying to work on this project remotely. And so maybe, Vinay, can you talk a little bit on your side, really about the project work you did with Vironix, a little bit about what you were trying to do and, what you were able to accomplish?
In my experience personally, I'd never done such an intensive research for any particular medical project like this. And we had to search through the depths of the internet, particularly because this this disease was not very, there's a lot of literature regarding this disease, but in terms of categorizing in the manner that we wanted to the severity of their disease, there was actually not a lot of literature, and we had to kind of search hard for that. And eventually we came upon a study that we could use and analyze for our research. So a lot of my role in this project was kind of making this data usable for our algorithm eventually that we became to develop. And so a lot of the data that we had was, to get a little bit technical, a lot of the data that we had was basically they presented a bunch of categories for the clinical characteristics of the patients, and they gave the mean and standard deviation for in particular like age and the number of exacerbations, etc. And what we did was we needed to transform this data into like a distribution for a set of categories. For instance, for age, we had to our categories were from 0 to 35 years old all the way to 65 plus years old. And these, you can't just have like normal distributions for this data because it doesn't fit. So we had to look into the particular the particular distributions that we could sort of generate the percentages or the probabilities that we would eventually use for our Bayes our Bayes and Monte Carlo problem. And we'd have to develop this distribution with the mean and standard deviation, and we had to do a couple of research. A lot of research into the sort of statistical side of dealing with this data, and that's a lot of what my role was in this project.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it looks like it was heavy in the data handling and statistics sort of portion of the predictive modeling process, right? You've done a lot of work in finding the data, cleaning it, mapping it into a form that could be used for models. Right? Mm-hmm. And then Shreyas, probably you can talk a little bit about where you spent a lot of your time on that project because it sort of entered right after this part, right?
Right. So after Vinay did the frankly extremely intensive process of taking the data from like the literature and then making it into a usable form, what I basically did was I took that usable form and put it into basically a Python program that we've developed. And the basic purpose of the Python program is to simulate cases of realistic patients. So, and Sumanth can talk about this a lot because of his previous research, but the advantage of our process is that we can take data from the literature out there and we can basically create like patient cases. We can create and simulate patient cases in which we can then run algorithm like testing, and we can create machine learning algorithms based off of. So basically what I did was I took Vinay's data that he had cleaned and prepared, and I had basically run it through a program that we developed to create some 50,000 patient cases, which is probably the benefit of our program, is that we could run so many cases, and it was to ensure that we had a high accuracy in our algorithm. Mm-hmm. What I then did was I took the patient cases that we had simulated, and through traditional machine learning techniques like gradient boosting, for example, I basically put it into a Python package to then try and extract meaning from it, and for the machine to learn some sort of manner by which it could classify patient cases as either severe or non-severe. Once the machine was able to create this sort of decision boundary, we then decided to go further and classify the non-severe cases, the patients that the machine classified as not needing emergency medical attention, as either mild or moderate cases of asthma COPD overlap. And so that was the majority of our programming work, but I think just as importantly was our data visualization and presentation of our results. So using traditional Python packages like matplotlib, for example, I was able to find important features that were determinant of asthma COPD overlap severity. And I was just able to map out the importance of different factors in determining whether the machine classified someone as severe or non-severe. For example, I was able to find that smoking habits had a very important role in determining whether someone had the syndrome versus whether someone didn't. Mm-hmm. Or stuff like this that basically created a tool for us to then use the algorithm to diagnose people with certain severity.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. And if you look at the landscape of some of the things you both just said, okay, everything from deep clinical science research, data handling in Python, transformation of data, mapping of data to patient scenarios using Bayesian inference, machine learning classification, and then, of course, analysis and validation of machine learning results. I mean, all of these topics, had you been exposed to much of this in either high school or college prior to starting your internship? Maybe we can start with you, Vinay, on that.
To be honest, this information was, a lot of this information was completely new to me, especially on the statistical and data science sort of area of this project. Like, a lot of this was completely new to me, and it was, in high school you do learn a lot of, and I mean high school and college, you do learn a lot of methods to solve problems. These are all important. They can help you. They can be tools for you, but the real experience comes from this sort of application and this sort of intensive project that makes you use the tools that you learn on the way. And for me, quite frankly, I had to learn basically a lot of Python. I had a little bit of experience in Python before this. I had a lot of low-level C, programming language experience just from my major. But Python, this is a higher level language, and a lot of the things that's tedious about low-level programming language, Python makes really easy. And I was really surprised with a lot of the tools that I learned along the way, especially pandas. Pandas is the greatest thing ever. I don't know. It's such a cool tool to use, especially in data science. And I learned a lot of new tools, but more essentially, I learned the importance of these tools, because when you approach a problem, you have a lot of set of methods, and your brain needs to be able to rank or sort of understand what situation these tools that you learn are applicable. And there are a various number of problems. There's infinite number of problems, but the procedure that you take is developed by experiences like these. And I'm pretty sure if I were to approach another problem, a lot of the steps that I had taken in this procedure, I would have I would apply in countless number of other problems. And it's important that I learned all of this.
We love to hear that, by the way, and that means that you had an enriching experience that can help you, as you move on to your next set of applications. And Shreyas, I'd ask the same question, but also just maybe tell me a little bit about now that you've had this experience. What do you hope to do next? You're going to college pretty soon, right? So, what are your aspirations?
So, I guess I'll start off pre-internship and then I'll work my way forward. So my experience with machine learning had been largely minimal before Sumanth and I and Vinay, as well as the multitude of other amazing members on the team that have contributed to this project. I met them. So I guess like Vinay, I had some programming experience in Python. It was more of the standard print hello world type of things that I was used to. And actually, after a Coursera course, I think I learned a little bit more of pandas, which I guess is one of the benefits of the quarantine, was that I was able to engage in self-learning. But basically, I taught myself some basic pandas, some basic scikit-learn machine learning tools. But I think, to be honest, the actual application of the problem within a Vironix setting was something that widened my understanding of the field, because when you're thinking about it in sort of a vacuum, trying to find the answer to an assignment problem, for example, you aren't really applying a multitude of different problems, albeit basic to difficult, to then come up with a desired result. And especially trying to come up with realistic patient cases and to try to create an accurate algorithm model. You learn a lot of these sort of interdisciplinary almost. You're combining different packages, for example, combining different programming methods, and you're coming up with this sort of comprehensive education by which you're learning a lot about Python, and you're also helping the team. So I guess moving forward almost, I've learned so much about machine learning and algorithm development, as well as Python and pandas in this internship. And the internship isn't over, so we're obviously going to be doing a lot more work with a lot more diseases that we are able to help with. But I'd like to imagine that, especially for someone like an econ major like myself, there is a very, very big field in statistical analysis as well as econ, stuff like econometrics, for example, find statistical analysis and economics. And I think I can definitely use a lot of the education that I've learned within this internship specifically to then do good work in an economics field. For example, stuff like policy research uses a lot of machine learning algorithms to then classify certain policies as good or bad, or to then give an in-depth analysis of it. And I think that a lot of the stuff that I've learned, the foundational stuff that I've learned in this Python journey almost, could definitely be applicable to a larger research setting, college setting, and just beyond, in literally any venture that we choose. Programming is everywhere, and it's 100% usable in nearly every field. I've seen it being used in the medical field right now, and we can definitely find ways to apply it in the economic field and any sort of field we can literally choose.
As you said, Shreyas, the internship isn't over.
Yeah.
So your hard time isn't done with me in science, and it's never going to be done with me in music.
We haven't made it out yet.
Right. But keep practicing, keep learning, and we'll look forward to talking with you more as your education progresses.
Excellent.